Good evening, everybody. This is your host, Huge Pop, of the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Tonight on the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast, we have another episode of Pop's World Order. We have our guest tonight is was trained by Harley Race. He's the reigning SICW Classic Central States champion. Plus, he holds the AIWF International Championship. He is known to be one of the toughest in the business. A huge pop to Herb Simmons for and SICW for letting us interview guys like that. Please welcome to the show, to our podcast, the superstar Steve Fender. How you doing today, my guy?
Doing good. Happy to be here.
Thank you. We're happy to have you. Well, my first question is not a wrestling question. I will say that. I heard, and I want to congratulate you. You just married, from what I was told, the sweetest young lady ever.
Somebody said all the right words.
I've been married for 31 years. If we don't say the right words, we're in trouble, right? So congratulations, man.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We just got married December 31st. So
awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. The woman of your dreams, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, sir. We've been dating for almost 6 years. Well, we've been dating together for over 6 years now, but we've been dating for just shy of 6 years when we got married. So,
okay. Well, congratulations. I had to throw that in there.
Well, thank you.
You deserve that. So, my first question, wrestling related, is what inspired you to become a professional wrestler, and how did you get started in the industry?
What inspired me? Well, when I was probably around 7, 8 years old, I had a friend who was into wrestling, and I had no idea about professional wrestling at that point in time. But my buddy Mike was into wrestling, and he dragged me and my next two brothers into it, and I've been a fan ever since. That ironically just happened to be in 1987 with WrestleMania 3. WrestleMania 3. So that's kind of where the roots started. I watched wrestling for years and years. And during my teenage years, I started to become disenchanted with it because it became too hokey. So if you'll recall back to the early 90s when you had guys like Dr. Isaac Yankum and Duke the Dumpster Droese, the Repo Man.
Oh, man.
It was hard to watch WWF at that time.
Oink the Clown?
Yeah, exactly. And
But,
that's the show that I
Doink
predominantly watched was WWF. I followed a lot of other stuff in magazines, so I would go to Walmart or Target or Kmart with my parents, and I'd head straight to the magazine aisle every time while they shopped, and I'd just read wrestling magazines the whole time. And so I kept up on everybody in the business through the magazines, but television-wise, it was almost strictly WWF. It was getting harder to stomach as I was 15, 16 years old. But I guess as fate would have it, my first job working at McDonald's, we met another wrestling fan who worked there. And he asked us one day, "Hey, have you ever heard of ECW?" And I said, "Nope." And he said, "You guys need to check it out." Well, it was 1994 or 5 when this happened. And so it was kind of the infancy of ECW, but it was at kind of a peak as far as some of the talent they were using. So he would tell us about it. And he's like, "Yeah, you got to tune in to see this, and this, but it comes on this channel at this time." And so we checked it out a couple times, and I fell in love with the business all over again because it was stuff you weren't seeing on TV at that point in time on a national basis with either WWF or WCW. And so that kind of reignited my passion for wrestling. Kind of followed along with that for a couple of years until we moved off the East Coast and back to Missouri. And that was in 95 when we moved to Missouri. Of course, the wrestling wars between WWF and WCW started in 96, which is when I also graduated high school. Just told you my age if you can do some simple math. And so I had this wild hair up my butt that I wanted to get involved in the business, but I didn't know how to go about doing it. And so I'd done a little bit of research, and I'm not a computer savvy guy, so I didn't really go on the internet at that point in time, but reading wrestling magazines and I just got into Meltzer's newsletter at that point in time, the Wrestling Observer. So I knew you had to go to a wrestling school. And so I also knew from watching some other exposés and a couple things on the power plant, WCW, that you had to be in pretty good shape. Yeah. And so I would go work. I was working construction at the time. So I would go work, and just as soon as I come home from work, I would go running. And it didn't matter if it was 30 degrees outside or if it was 100 degrees outside, I'd go running. And I didn't know how far I was running when I started running. I just ran to a point where I was like, all right, well, enough's enough. I'm going to turn around and go back home. Well, it was about 2.5 miles is what it ended up being when I drove the route in my truck. So I was doing what I thought I needed to do to get into some kind of shape to go try out for wrestling. And when I turned 20, I was like, all right, well, now I got to find something to go to, right? So for about a year and a half, I was out exercising, lifting weights, running, good cardio stuff, right? I do some research on wrestling schools. I found out that Les Thatcher had a school in Cincinnati. It was featured on MTV. I don't remember what the show was, but it was featured on an MTV show. Then Dean Malenko had a school in Florida, and I don't remember the third school at the time. So I got addresses for all three of them. I sent information off, and Les Thatcher was the only one that sent me any information back. And I was looking at it, and I wasn't really sold on it, but I was like, well, I can make it work. Well, it just so happened that Harley Race was opening a wrestling school at the time. And I knew from reading a Wrestling Observer newsletter, Harley was from Kansas City. I lived in Jefferson City at the time. So it was about 2.5 hours driving away. But several different times of reading that Harley lived in Kansas City, I was like, how cool would it be to try to look this dude up and ask him if he would train guys to wrestle? Well, it just so happened that he was opening a wrestling school in Eldon, Missouri. So I was like, man, Eldon, that's like 30 minutes from me. And so I was like, I got to go check it out. And so I went down and checked it out. I wasn't blown away by the school by any means, but I was like, Harley races. I mean, the guy's there every day. He sits in his office every day, right? So I just for that reason alone, I was like, I gotta go here. I guess I can still live at home, work my full-time job, and then go train in the evenings, learn how to wrestle, and take it from there. And so that's what I did. I would work construction in the day, and typically 5 days out of the week. But if they didn't have shows on a weekend, I would go down on a Saturday and Sunday and train in the ring on Saturday and Sunday too. So anywhere between 5 and 7 days a week, I was training to get in the ring. And Monday through Friday for sure, Harley would be there in the office, at least for the first hour we were training. Then obviously he'd go home because he wanted to eat dinner. Him and his wife at the time was BJ. She's since passed, but they were ready to go home typically around 6:30. So they would leave and go, and we'd stay there and train for a couple more hours. So that's kind of how I got into the business.
Wow. Harley Race, man, that would be awesome.
Yeah. That's phenomenal right there.
Definitely.
There you go, man.
So was there any wrestlers that, obviously being a big fan, that you kind of looked up to and like you try to portray your style off of them?
So before I got into the business, I got into tapes and looking back at old stuff. And I don't remember if somebody suggested Dynamite Kid to me or if it was just somebody that I found through reading various stuff. And a lot of people call him Dynamite the best pound-for-pound guy in the business. But when I first saw Dynamite Kid matches, I was blown away. And so I I wouldn't say I emulated Dynamite, but I definitely watched his matches quite a bit. So different variety of guys, I guess, is where I pull stuff from. But Dynamite and Chris Benoit were my two favorites. Kurt Hennig was my all-time favorite heel. I love Kurt Hennig. Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude. I used to do some stuff as a tribute to Harley. I don't do some of the stuff that I used to do anymore just because you get old and you change what you do in the ring. But Harley, Jake the Snake, Ricky Steamboat. I used to watch a lot of Ric Flair, and for psychology, I think he was good. But I never really tried to do the stuff he did in the ring. I never stole his spots or anything, I guess you could say. But those are kind of the guys I looked up to.
Okay.
Speaking of Ric Flair, as both of you guys, that whole second retirement match. Come on now.
The one that was done last year?
Yeah,
Thank God I never watched that. I never watched the first retirement match, and I never watched the second one.
I couldn't force myself to watch. I said I just can't.
That was with Jay Lethal, right?
Mm-hmm.
No,
I was going to watch it, and a guy I worked with he told me, he says, "Don't waste your time." He said, "I watched it, and it was terrible."
Right, Dad. My dad was in the chats, watching it. So, yeah, that was not a good one. That was not at all a good one.
No, Huge Pop, real quick. I just want, because you mentioned Doink earlier. I got to say, yes, Doink. But you got to admit, heel Doink was the jam.
I just watched The Dark Side of the Ring on Doink a couple weeks ago, and I'll admit I liked it. Now the guy was a little off, no doubt, but I just recently watched a shoot interview with Bad News Brown, and many times throughout this shoot interview he talked about how the business attracts all the crazy people, and that is a very fitting statement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, he is out there.
So, as a wrestler for many years, or through your years of doing this, I'm sure, have you made mistakes, and have you learned from those mistakes? Then do you just get up and brush it off and just keep on going?
Can you expand on that? What kind of mistakes? Mistakes in the ring, wrestling in the
mistakes
match?
mistakes in the ring. When you get out, you're like, oh my god, and the guys in the back go, hey, that was good, but
I'm sure I had. Well, I can tell you for a fact, I had this one match, and it was a tag team match, probably one of the worst matches I've ever had. But me and another guy, Mason Hunter, were Harley's tag team champions at the time, and typically Harley would have his heavyweight champion in his main event slot, but for some reason the champion wasn't on the show, and I don't know if it's because whoever had the belt at the time was in Japan. But the main event ended up being a tag title match. So it was me and Mason Hunter against two other guys, T-Money, and I don't remember who his partner was right now. But we had quite a bit planned out. And once we got out to the ring, I completely forgot every single bit of it. I had no clue about anything. T-Money was trying to call stuff to me in the match, and I was like, I was lost. I had no idea what was going on. And it was I would imagine that it came off pretty crappy, but being in the ring, you don't really know it at the time. But afterwards, and this is the only time Harley ever did this, Harley came back to the dressing room, and he just looked at me, and he looked at the other three guys, and he looks back at me, and he says, "What the fuck was that?" So I knew it was bad at that point, because typically, no matter how bad you thought your match was, a lot of times if you asked Harley how it was, you just get a shake and a nod. And if you got the nod, you knew that everything was all right. If he sat there and he talked to you about stuff, then you knew you did something wrong. And I didn't get too many of the lectures on what I did wrong, but I know for a fact that after that match, it had to have been terrible for him to say, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Yeah, that would.
Oh,
That coming from that guy, from him, that's got to be like, oh, dang.
Harley, believe me, nicest guy in the world. I can't give enough praise for Harley. Nicest guy in the world. He gives guys plenty of opportunities to do what they want to do in the ring, to hone their craft, to try and do something. But he also knows everybody's limitations, and he'd be the first to tell you this guy's a shit. But, like he'd have somebody who's using that he knows isn't very talented, but they have a character. And so because of the character, he wants to use them on the show, even though the talent's not there. So it's the trade-off, right? You're getting something, but you're giving something up. But he knows he's got other guys higher on the card that can work and carry the show versus the guys that are just going to be character-based and get over with the kids in the audience. So he's plenty forgiving about stuff, but if you screwed up, he wouldn't be shy about telling you.
so would you agree that it's good to have one of your talents that you know can carry a match against a very green person?
Yes and no. I was told very early on, and I preach it now to the younger guys, that you can only learn by being in the ring with somebody who knows more than you. If you're wrestling with somebody and they're on the same level as you won't get any better. But if you're in there with somebody who's better than you, they're going to bring you up to their level. That's when you're going to learn. That's what the green guys need. But if you're going to hurt the overall presentation of your shows, then I think it's a bad idea to do that. If you don't have enough good workers to carry the other matches, then you're going to hurt your overall product. So it's a trade-off. It's a give and take. If you can get a couple good matches on the show, but also put an experienced worker with somebody who's not so experienced to help bring them up and help teach them a little bit, then I'm all for it. I've been wrestling for 24 years now. I started in 2000, and I tell a lot of people, I say it regularly enough that most people should know this by now. Most of the guys, most of the workers anyway. I view myself as somebody who's here to teach kids at this point, teach the upcoming guys, because I've done things in my career that most people will never, ever do. I started with Harley, so I was trained with Harley. Harley would bring in guys from WCW. At the time, WCW was still in business. So he'd bring in WCW guys that weren't on TV. Like he brought in Haku a lot. He brought in Alan Funk. Was that the guy's name? Kiwi. He brought him in. Chuck Palumbo, Sean O'Hare, Malaya Hisako, when she was under contract at WCW, he would bring in, but she also lived there for probably about a year and trained with us. But he'd bring all these people in to help teach us. And so we got that experience. But 16 months into my career, I went to Japan, and I did my first tour for Pro Wrestling Noah in July of 2001. So, I mean, I was green then, and being in the ring with world-class workers in Japan really taught me a lot. And Too Cold Scorpio and Big Van Vader were the foreign wrestlers that were on every tour at that point. And Scorpio kind of took me under his wing, and towards the end of my first tour, he's like, "Hey kid, would you want to work out in the dojo if I can make the deal?" I was like, well, hell yeah. Because I knew that guys like Scorpio and Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, they had all trained in New Japan's dojo. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I would love to train in the dojo. And so Scorpio got me into the Pro Wrestling Noah dojo. And I lived in Tokyo for 3 months. So I did a tour in August, lived there for 3 months in between tours, and did a tour on the backside of it before I came back to the States. But anytime I would go over there, I would train before the shows with all the Japanese guys. So I was doing all the stuff the young kids that were training. Well, the trainees plus the young guys that were on the card already. I was doing all the warm up stuff they were doing. So in that regard, I mean, my conditioning my conditioning has always been pretty superb, but at that point in time, it was phenomenal, probably. So, I mean, even today, guys will tell me that, you know, they blew up in the ring, and I'm to the point now where I don't do a whole lot of cardio outside of the ring. So I do blow up, but if I blow up, I know the guy I'm working is definitely blown up. So, but I do see myself as a teacher, you know, passing knowledge on, you know, stuff that I've picked up over the years through all these different experiences I've had. So I try to pass on as much as I can. And if I see a guy that's taking more interest in what I'm saying, then I'll concentrate on that guy because obviously he wants to learn. Whereas if I tell somebody 2 or 3 times, stop doing this, do this, and they keep doing what they was doing to begin with, well, I'm like Jim Cornette in that regard. I'll tell you 3 times, and if you don't fix it after the 3rd time, obviously you don't want to fix it, so you won't tell them anything else after that. So I've kind of gotten to that point myself, and maybe that's the old grizzled veteran in me. But, I mean, you can only tell a guy so many times to change what they're doing or do something different or, you know, whatever the case may be. And if they're not going to heed that advice, well, you might as well just be talking to the wall, right?
How do you see a lot of that in the indies?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of that goes back to their training. A lot of guys don't have the dedication. So if you'll recall, I told you I was training anywhere from 5 to 7 days a week when I started. And it was 3 months from when I started to it was like 2.5 months. From when I started to when I debuted, it was only about a 2.5 month period. And I thought I was doing great at that point in time. So it was May 20th of 2000s when I debuted. And I thought I was great. I thought I was great. I shouldn't say great. I thought I was good all the way up until July of 2001 when I went to Pro Wrestling Noah. And I saw their worst guy could probably blow away any of the guys that I was working with at the time. And so I've always been a guy that if the bar's up here and I'm below the bar, I'm trying to bring myself up to the bar. And I'm going to do whatever I can to get to that point. And I think I earned the respect. Well, I know I earned the respect of the guys in Japan because that's what I did. They didn't think that I'd be able to tough it out and go through their training and do what they put the Japanese through. And I did do that. And by doing that, I earned the respect of all those guys over there. So
you've held many, many titles, multiple championships, currently hold 3. What one title was the most memorable win or the most memorable to you to today?
Most memorable title win. I beat Steve Anthony. Jason Dupree is also another name he went by. But King of the 450, Steve Anthony, I beat for the WLW Heavyweight title the 2nd time I won it. And he's a guy that I always loved working. He's roughly my size. He was a little bit lighter than me and just maybe an inch shorter than me, but phenomenal worker. Loved working him. We always had good matches. So I knew we were going to have a good match, and we did. But what put it over the top was that Harley had brought Roddy Piper in that night, and Roddy Piper got involved in the finish of the match. And so that's just something that I'll always remember is having Piper there. And you know, Harley brought him in a couple times, but he was always a good guy. I like picking his brain. So
that's one guy I wish I had a chance to meet. That guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely, man. Piper just, I loved how any given second he could just go off.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Rico.
So who would you say would be your number one dream match opponent?
Oof. Kurt Hennig. I would love to work Kurt Hennig. And if you'll recall back in the beginning of the podcast, I told you that Harley would bring guys in. I'd try not to mark out, and I wouldn't go up and ask him for autographs and whatnot. Harley brought Kurt Hennig into a show way back in 2000, and it was Mick Foley, Kurt Hennig, and the Harris twins all on the same card. It was a fair show, Greene County Fair in Springfield, Missouri. And I really, to this day, I kick myself in the ass for not getting a picture with it. Like, I didn't even go over and say hi to him because I was kind of intimidated. But I also didn't want to make it look like I was marking out for him. So I never even went and introduced myself to him. And I regret it to this day. And Joe Hennig, his son, actually came and trained with us down at Harley's before he went to WWE. You know, he got his start with World League Wrestling, and I've told him several times, like, man, Harley brought your dad in. I still kick myself in the ass for not going over and at least getting a picture, or at least saying hi to the guy. Mm-hmm. But without a doubt, I would love to work Kurt. I think that'd just be phenomenal.
Yeah, he's one of those kind of like a Ted DiBiase, to where they've always been a heel, and it's just you can't see him any other way. They're just so good at it. And Kurt, man, he was just phenomenal wrestler. Phenomenal.
Absolutely. I love – I don't watch a whole lot of wrestling anymore because I just don't watch a lot of TV. But I've got the Bret Hart DVD the WWE put out, and I got the Kurt Hennig one. And there's matches from both of them on there, from Bret Hart and Kurt Hennig working each other. And those are some of the best matches ever, I think. And those two just had amazing chemistry together. And I don't know if anybody today can replicate what those guys did. What was that, 20 years ago, 25 years ago? I mean, you I think that part of the business is lost. You won't see guys on TV today that can work like those guys can work.
And I still, to this day, believe that, like, Bret Hart and Kurt Hennig, they're just so, when it comes to talks about, who are the best in the business, that they don't get enough credit. Those guys, they did great work, man. Great work.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
You're right, because this day and age, I mean, I know SICW still tells stories, etc., but I see more spots that I do storytelling. Like in the AEW Double for Nothing pay-per-view last on Saturday, Edge was doing a very good match. And he had no reason to climb that cage and jump up, that was a great spot. Yeah. But he got hurt. He broke his leg. I think I heard that he broke his leg, but
I just read that today.
Spots are spots, but I remember, like, I'll tell you right now, if you ask me what do you remember about wrestling the most? Hulk Hogan, you're wearing a Macho Man Randy Savage shirt. I was going to talk about this earlier, but Hulk Hogan coming down Daytona Beach, dropping the leg on Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah.
The Bloodline, the whole story at the Bloodline. There's stories, and I mean, I talk to Herb all the time about territory days. I wish the territory days would come back.
Yeah.
I just wish. That's just so cool.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Telling stories in the ring is something that's a lost art too. Everybody wants to call stuff in the back, which I'm guilty of it too. I want to call stuff in the back, but you can call stuff in the back that's going to give you a believable match that tells a story at the same time, and most guys just can't do it.
Yeah, I think Mark Henry, he was talking about, I can't remember what podcast, but he mentioned that, and he said this just, the business has lost the ability to tell that story, to paint that picture for you the way it used to. Now you have, we've talked about this many times, Huge Pop, where you have the internet, and people know what's going to happen before it happens, and there's no excitement, no surprises anymore.
Exactly. Well, and that's why you get a lot of the angles now where workers are trying to work the guys. They're trying to work the locker room, and that's just ignorant, if you ask me. Brian Pillman got away with it when he did the loose cannon gimmick, but now they're trying to do it with more and more stuff, and I think it's just ignorant for the business. In my own opinion, it makes the workers themselves look bad. The workers that are trying to pull it off, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about fans a little bit.
Sure.
What is your fan interaction like? Is it a great interaction? Are fans important to you as far as in the business? Has there been any cool interactions that you'd like to share?
Fans are definitely important. Yeah, 100%. Fans are important. They play a vital role. You can work in front of 30 rabid fans and think you have a phenomenal match. And you can work in front of 350 fans that are sitting on their butt, and you'll think your match was the shits. The fans definitely play a role in the overall product. So without them, the product wouldn't be what it is. And without them, you wouldn't be doing what you do in the ring, because you should be doing your stuff in the ring based on their reactions. So if you're having a match where you're trying to work fans, then you need the fans, and you need that interaction, that involvement with them. As far as any actually, I do have a good fan interaction one. In the early days of WLW, we ran in this community center in Eldon, Missouri. And this community center, typically Harley would draw 350 people per show. But if you brought in a name, he would pack the place. And there were several times where they would get 600 people in there, and the fire marshal would tell them, no more, that's it. You can't sell any more tickets. So anyway, when they did that, when they got that many people in there, they would put the gimmick tables out in a separate room from the actual arena where they normally were. And I remember being in there, and myself and my tag team partner at the time, Matt Murphy, had won the tag team belts. And of course, being the heels, we cheated to do it, right? We came out to the autograph table because after the tag match was intermission, which led into the main event. And we came out to the autograph tables in this separate room, and it wasn't 2 minutes after we got in there, the room was packed with people, and they were all chanting cheaters at us. Just phenomenal. I mean, at the time, we weren't expecting that, and we were young in the business at that point, less than 2 years in for sure. But we couldn't believe the reaction we got, and it was all 100% due to how well the match itself came off and the finish of the match too. And I don't remember the finish of the match, but the fans were so pissed off at us for going over, and you rarely see reactions like that today, especially on the indie scene, but you rarely see people that are legitimately pissed off about the outcome of a match anymore. And part of that's because kayfabe is gone, and part of that is because people aren't working the fans anymore, at least not on TV. I don't go to any house shows, so I don't know what kind of interaction the bigger companies are doing with the fans at house shows. But without that interaction, you have nothing, in my opinion.
Well, I was at an XIW Extreme Impact Wrestling event down in Panama City Beach with guys like Damian Wayne and Controversial Inc. and Ray Fury and Lucha. Anyways, Ray Fury and Lucha had a match against Controversial Inc. for the championships, and Controversial Inc. cheated and they won. And Ray Fury and his partner were at the table at the podcast. They were talking, and all of a sudden, chaos ensued. The fans are surrounding the whole thing. Chairs are being thrown. Controversial Inc. came in. I was like, holy geez, you know, and I'm like, what's going on? And that was so cool because of, you know, we got worked, because I was like, thought this was big time, right? And it was like something I've never seen, you know, and that's what I like about indie wrestling is that if they get into the fans and they show the fans, you know, the love and stuff like that. So that's what I applaud you guys in the indies. Keep it up.
Yeah, thank you.
Keep it up, man.
Definitely. I think I was trying to remember. I think the last time I was really shocked, like I was actually surprised, was when the streak was ended for the Undertaker. That was the last time I was actually just surprised.
Yeah, I think just about everybody was. Nobody was expecting that finish.
No, not at all. Not at that time, at least. You know, I knew it couldn't last forever.
Right. Well, it should have.
Stevie Donald Wilson, good evening. Thank you for coming in the chat. SICW Classic Central States Champion.
Yep.
Who is next for you? Is there a challenger that you are preparing yourself for?
Well, prior to the podcast starting, you and I was talking about the Fan Fest that SICW just held in St. Louis. The show that commenced on that evening, I wrestled the AIWF World Heavyweight Champion Greg Anthony, and I was unsuccessful in my challenge for his belt. So he squeaked by, and I think I could probably take him if we had a rematch. So I really believe that my sights are going to be set on Greg Anthony and his AIWF World Heavyweight Championship.
Is that something that Herb can set up?
Definitely something that Herb can set up.
I think, Herb, if you're still in the chat, I don't know if you are, I think you need to step that up. I think he's Superstar Steve. I think he deserves another shot. Greg Anthony, I think that'd be a great thing. So what I got to ask, because this guy's annoying. He's on the TV, on the Facebook. Sean Vincent. The Canadian hero, or the Canadian whatever I want to call him.
Yeah. Well, he likes to think he's something special, and he is special, believe me, but not the kind of special he thinks. He's special in a different kind of way. Yeah, he's Sean Vincent, all right. He's not on my list of favorite people, if you will. So, at one point, he was trying to weasel his way into being my tag team partner, and I saw right through his BS, and he's not my tag team partner.
So what was because you're watching wrestling a lot when you were younger.
Yep.
What was your favorite wrestling match of all time?
My favorite wrestling match for the longest time was Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage from WrestleMania 3.
Love it.
That has since been replaced by Bret Hart and Steve Austin from WrestleMania 13. I think that is probably my all-time favorite match. As far as live matches that I've seen, I was in Budokan Hall when Kenta Kobashi beat Misawa for the GHC heavyweight title. And if you know Japanese wrestling, those are two of the all-time legends in Japan, and they did not disappoint one bit with that match.
Nice. Yeah, that Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man, that just forever will go down as one of the best classic matches. I think it's on everybody's list. You know, if you got a list of top 5 matches, that match has to be there.
It has to be. Yeah, if it's not, then you're not a true wrestling fan.
Yeah, well, also you got the Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, their first WrestleMania match. Wait, was it 25? Or because they did 25 and 26, I believe.
Can't remember.
I think it was 25.
Was that wasn't the retirement match, was it?
Nope, it was the first one because the retirement was the next year. That was just, man, it was crazy. It was just so crazy.
It's funny. You can ask anybody that's had matches on the big stage what their favorite match is, and I guarantee you the majority of them would tell you some of their favorite matches happened in an arena that was just a house show match. You know, I asked Harley that one time, what was the best match he ever had? And he said, well, I don't know if I can tell you the best match I ever had, but some of my best matches weren't on TV. I can tell you that. They were in high school gymnasiums.
Ugh, yeah.
So
It's crazy.
So Herb Simmons says, I'm on his friends list, I bet. Are you talking about Superstar Steve's, or are you talking about, what are you talking about? While he's answering that question. NWA, man, you just had a big match with EC3.
I did.
What was that like? How'd that come out? Any shots fired need to be towards EC3?
No, I have tremendous respect for EC3. I didn't realize he's been around the business for quite a while. I don't think he's been around as long as I have, but not far behind. But he's obviously done a lot of things and a lot of right things to get to where he's at right now. So nothing but respect for EC3. We had a match. I'll put you on. I'll consider putting you on my friend list, Herb. But yeah, definitely respect for EC3. It was a hell of an opportunity. I'll go down the history books as being a challenger for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, which, I mean, being trained by Harley, the connection there, I mean, that's just phenomenal that, I didn't get to hold the belt like Trevor Murdoch's another Harley race trainee. Trevor had the belt at one point, but just being in the history books as being a challenger for that belt, I think is a great accomplishment. But definitely lots of respect for EC3. Would I have liked if the belt had changed hands that night? Absolutely, 100%. Looking back, and I thought it at the time, I wasn't pleased. Well, if you if you send me that fine money, I'll really consider it. I want that $1,000 back, Herb.
We'll have to hear that story.
Yeah.
The night of that match, I was disappointed in my performance, but looking back and having time to really go over it, I was really disappointed. Because we didn't really mess anything up in the match per se, but there was just things I could have done differently. I did blow up really bad in that match too, because it was hot. It was really hot in that building. And so I did blow up. He blew up also. So, I mean, it wasn't just me, but he was happy with the match afterwards is the word that I got. So as long as he was happy and I didn't do anything to make him mad, then I was happy, but definitely felt that I could have stepped up more than what I did for that match.
As a fan of EC3, I mean, I'm a fan now of his, but I think this is because of how TNA, what storyline they put him in. I think EC3 was with Dixie Carter, correct? If I'm right.
At one time he was, yeah.
Yeah, Ethan Page. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I didn't like that story, but it wasn't that I didn't like him. I just didn't like that storyline. But I've been watching NWA, and man, he is like a monster. First of all,
Yeah,
he's jacked. But so tell us about this fine money, man.
Well, I spouted off to one Herb Simmons at the wrong point in time, and he retaliated by telling me that if I didn't get out of the ring, that I was going to be fined $1,000, and so he ended up fining me $1,000. But if he's willing to give that money back to be a friend, then I'll definitely consider the friendship.
So how recent was this little episode with Herb Simmons?
This is probably 4 or 5 months ago.
All right. So here's a good question. The reason why we're doing SICW all week is for this, because I have a couple more guys on the show. So what do you think about the weekend card at NASCAR and wrestling? I am super stoked about this. I wish I could be there. This sounds like lots of fun that you guys are merging or something with collaborating, I guess, if you want to call that, with NASCAR. And so that's huge for SICW.
The Melee on the Midway. So that is this Saturday. It's a tie-in with NASCAR and SICW. So it's going to be huge. They're expecting over 20,000 fans to be watching at least this portion. The wrestling is going to be divided up into two different time slots. One early morning show starting at 11, and then one afternoon show. And I'm not sure the time on that. I can only make the morning time portion, so I've got other places I have to be on that afternoon. So I'll be at the morning card, and then I'll be scooting out of there. But it's a huge opportunity for SICW. It's an opportunity for us to show as a group what we can do in front of a huge, huge audience. And hopefully when we knock it out of the ballpark, we'll open doors for other ventures and other opportunities for us.
So who are you facing?
I am facing Bobby D on this show. And if there's anybody on that follows SICW wrestling, they'll know that I don't like Bobby D, and Bobby D doesn't like me. And we're both happy with that. We both are very, very content with the feelings we have towards one another. If you've ever seen Bobby D and myself wrestle, you have not been disappointed, and you will not be disappointed again this Saturday when we go out and beat the living crap out of each other in front of a large, large audience.
So what's the backstory behind you and Bobby D not liking each other?
Just years of wrestling. I've been with SICW since 2018, I think. 2018 or 2019. 2018, actually, because that's when I met my wife, which I would not have met if I wasn't traveling through St. Louis. So 2018 is when I started working for Herb. And I think the first time Bobby and I wrestled was in either late 2018 or early 2019. And just from the first couple of times we worked, I knew there was chemistry there, and sure enough, every time we've worked, we've had really good matches. It doesn't matter if it's at SICW TV tapings, or if it's a house show, or if it's a TV taping at one of the Saturday shows. Anytime that Bobby D and I are in the ring together, you can be guaranteed you're going to see a good show.
Those SICW Saturday shows are the SICW All-Star shows, right? Am I correct?
Yep.
Nice.
And these are numbers, dude. Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast fans, watchers. As of today, the count is 30,000 to 40,000 fans.
That's crazy.
Sunday's show is 80,000 fans.
That's crazy.
Can you put that in?
Crazy.
If you put that into reality, as a wrestler in a SICW, I mean, I don't know what the largest crowd you've wrestled in front of, Steve, but 80,000, 40,000. That's nuts.
5,000, 10,000's a lot.
Yeah.
I've wrestled in front of 20,000 plus a couple times, but I mean, 30 to 40,000 is going to be phenomenal.
Absolutely. You know, have had a chance to meet, I have to give him credit, Espinoza. He popped in earlier, you know, so SICW's put on crazy shows. Yes, they had Randy Orton in the ring last week to induct in the Hall of Fame induction of his father.
Inducting Bob. Yep.
Bob Orton. That's awesome.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about SICW and what it means to you, what you've seen over the years, what you've experienced, man. So how did you get involved with Herb Simmons and SICW?
So it was kind of a friend type thing. So I was working for another group that I still wrestle for today, New Breed Wrestling. The owner of New Breed Wrestling is Scotty Z. And Scotty is friends with the guy who knew some other guys that know Herb and know some of the other guys that were involved or are involved in SICW. And so it got to be a thing where Scott and Bruiser kept saying, man, you need to go wrestle for SICW. You need to go wrestle for SICW. So finally one day I was like, all right, well, if you get me booked, then I'll go wrestle for SICW. And so they got me booked, and I've been working for them ever since.
Wow, that's crazy. That is awesome, man.
So I was gonna pick your brain a little bit, see if you know anything about this Huge Pop. I think I brought it up to you because NWA has a show this Saturday in Knoxville, Tennessee, called Back to the Territories.
Okay.
So is that going back to what we were talking about earlier about how going back to the territory areas? Do you know anything about that? Or
I don't know anything about this specific show. I do follow the business. Like I said, I don't watch a lot of stuff on TV, but I do follow the business. I haven't heard about this show specifically until now. But I would be all for a territorial type system. Guys would be able to learn so much more if they had different places to go work. So right now, you've got guys that are wrestling each other. Well, I'm just going to throw out cities. So you got guys that are wrestling each other in St. Louis, and then they go to Kansas City and they wrestle each other in Kansas City because they got booked on the same show in Kansas City. And then they go down to Springfield, Missouri, and they wrestle down in Springfield, Missouri because they got booked on a show down there. But they're not learning anything because it's the same two guys wrestling the same two guys. If you recall, in order for you to get better in the ring, you got to wrestle guys that are better than you.
Yes.
And you got to wrestle guys that are different. You know, if you're wrestling the same guys over and over, you're going to do the same stuff over and over. You know, it's like lifting weights. You've got muscle memory. You know, once you get in the ring, if you get lost in the ring, it's very easy to go back to what your muscle memory is. And if your muscle memory is the same boring crap over and over and over that doesn't look good, that's what you're going to do when you get lost in the ring. But if you got somebody else in there that can lead you through and push your bounds and show you different things, then you're going to expand your horizons. You're going to bring yourself up. Well, the guy that you're working is going to bring you up to his level, which is going to expand your knowledge. And that's when you start to learn. And there's several guys out there that work for SICW specifically that tout that every time they wrestle me, they learn something new because I make it a point to ask a guy, hey, you know how to do this? I've never done that before. Well, we're going to do it tonight, you know, because that's how they're going to learn. I don't do it all the time, but if I feel comfortable with the guy, and definitely if I've worked him before and we haven't done something, I'm going to try to push him into a different direction and try something he hasn't done before. So
pull them out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, get him out of that comfort zone. But in that regard, if you have 4 or 5 guys in each territory that can work with 4 or 5 guys from a different territory and move, keep shuffling guys all around, the business as a whole would be so much better off. So much better off. It's so easy today to get into the wrestling business. It's as easy as going online and buying a wrestling ring, setting it up in your backyard, and telling everybody, "Hey, I'll train you how to wrestle if you show up to my house every Tuesday night at 6:00." Right? So anybody can be a wrestling trainer now if they have a wrestling ring. That's all it takes to get into the business. Back in the day, there's plenty of stories out there. There's, stories of guys that would get broken arms, broken legs. They'd get ran off because there was kayfabe at one point in time. There's no kayfabe anymore, and it made it harder to get into the business. Hulk Hogan, and he'll tell you that he had his leg broke. Was it Hiro Matsuda that did it? But, he got his leg broke when he first tried breaking into the business, and he went, healed up, and 8, 10, 12 weeks later, whenever it was, came back and tried again. And they probably roughed him up the second time, and, he left with a bruised ego, I'm sure, but he kept coming back. And those are the guys you want in the business, or the guys, you find out who really wants it at that point in time. There's a lot of guys out there today that they just want to be a weekend warrior. They just want to be able to tell their girlfriend or their buddies that they're a pro wrestler, but they look just like the people that should be sitting out in the seats. They don't look like a pro wrestler, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that don't take pride in what they're doing, but if you had the territorial system to weed a lot of those guys out of the business and to get rid of the shit promoters that are around that run those crap shows and don't pay their guys anything, then you would improve the business dramatically.
Nope.
Herb Simmons says, "Gosh dang, he sounds like he knows the business that he has been has been lost." So, hey Herb, I sent you a link to the podcast. If you want to come on to plug the NASCAR, I'd love to have you. Also, I have a question for Herb. I missed this Fan Fest too. I hope that Herb's health or SICW can pull it together and have a Fan Fest 3 because that's on my bucket list. Not that I don't want to pressure anybody, but I'd love to
no
be
pressure
there.
whatsoever.
No pressure, Herb, whatsoever. But so at the Fan Fest, we had the Bruiser Brody Battle Royal. My first question: have you ever been in one of those?
I think I was in the one they had. It wasn't at the Fan Fest, so they've had the Bruiser Brody Battle Royal for quite a few years now, and I've been in one or two of them, but it wasn't at the Fan Fest events.
Attila Khan won it this year, huh? That guy's a scary dude.
Yep. Yep, he sure is. He's a combination of Abdullah the Butcher and Bruiser Brody, and he was also trained by Harley Race, so he's got a little bit of Harley in him, but definitely a scary dude.
Oh, huge pop. Did you get that picture?
Yes. So there you go. It's NW.
See everybody who's in there.
Okay, yeah.
You see threes in the center stage.
And oh man, I feel so bad. I off the top of my head, I need to look at their names. I know Mackenzie, but the two girls from KFW Crossfire Wrestling over here in East Tennessee, they're going to be there as well. Some good stuff going on.
Good stuff, yeah. I mean, like I said in the beginning of the show, Superstar Steve was, we have like 4 or 5 different promotions that that we cover. A couple in Florida we're trying to get our feet in the door with KFW. We talked to Tommy, and Tommy, he's all for it, but he's been super busy. Yeah. SICW, Herb Simmons. I'm thankful for Herb Simmons, and he opened the door for me and Reek to cover their mid states. They let us do it, so we're having fun, man, and we're just trying to give wrestlers like you the platform to get your stuff out there more than you already have. I mean, I'm sorry, I hate saying this about us. We're just a small podcast, but our focus beginning of last year, turned to the independents because everybody that has a podcast or whatever is covering WWE, AEW, everybody. I mean, and it got so flooded with opinions, that we weren't allowed to be fans, right? I think Rico will agree. It became we couldn't be fans of the craft. So we backed away from it, and he went to his first indie show last month or 2 months ago.
Last month.
And like I said before, I went to my first indie show 2 years ago at XIW, and I had a renowned love for professional wrestling.
Absolutely.
I swear to God, I don't know if it's just because you're so close to the crowd or to the ring, what it was, but it's insanity, but a good insanity.
It's a huge change from a big, huge arena, where you seem like just this little speck in a room, right? Versus being 15, 20 feet from the ring and seeing all the action right there. Yeah, huge difference.
Yeah. And no, I've been to in Knoxville to SmackDown and to Raw. And that's what I was telling Huge Pop. I said I really love that KFW show. Was just, man, it was. I put that above those two shows that I've been to. The only thing that holds up against it was I got to see the Bloodline. The only thing I held up against it.
That's mad praise from Herb Simmons. He says, even though Superstar and I don't always see eye to eye, he's one of the best in the business. Every promoter should have him in the room. You've been to New Japan. You've been over to Japan. You've been your WLW. You trainer for WLW. Am I correct?
Yep. I was the head trainer in WLW for several years. Brought a lot of my Japanese learnings with me, and a lot of the training that they did in Japan, I incorporated into the training we were doing in the school at the time. I brought in some stuff that Les Satcher was doing at his school and incorporated it into what we were doing. So yeah, had a good time. I mean, obviously I was younger and in more shape than I am now, but definitely a good time in the business, when I was teaching guys.
Now, where are they out of?
Say again.
Are they out of St. Louis area too?
WLW is out of Troy, Missouri, but at the time they were in Eldon.
So still around the Missouri area.
Yep.
So I think, I mean, like I was talking to you earlier on, we'll see what happens, but it'd be cool to have SICW, Mid-States, and WLW part of the Huge Pop, all, like almost like our own territory, little podcast thing. So I hope it works out, man. It just
absolutely.
We reached an hour mark. Herb Simmons, if you're out there, I sent you a link. I'd love to have you on just quickly to close the show to promote the NASCAR. If you are willing to come on, we'll give you a few minutes. If you don't, that's cool. So anything else you need to ask? You want to ask Superstar Steve? Rico.
I would say in about 5 years, where do you see yourself, and what do you see yourself doing?
In 5 years, well, in 5 years, if I'm still in the ring, I will be even more crippled than I am now. The future is definitely as a mentor, as somebody who could pass knowledge along to the younger guys, to help, answer questions, help them set matches up, whatever they need to do. But definitely, I'll always be involved in the business in some capacity. My days in the ring are definitely numbered, but I'll be involved in the business in some capacity.
Gotcha.
I cannot leave out one of the favorite parts of the show. God, I told you I am a foster parent. I talk to the foster kids. They know what I do. They ask me, "Hey, can I ask some questions?" I know I can't bring you on, but so we sit around the dinner table and haven't done it in a while, but I have the same kids, so I'm sure they have the same questions. So I have a list of 8 or 9 questions. It's just a random shoot question. And you ready?
Sure.
Favorite food?
Favorite food? Depends on the day, but probably sushi.
You like pizza?
Love pizza. Who doesn't like pizza?
Right. So does pineapple belong to that pizza?
Oh, hell yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Somebody finally agrees with me. Thank you. Everybody says no.
Oh, definitely. Pineapple, definitely.
Favorite TV show?
I don't watch a lot of TV. If the TV's on and I'm in the same room, it's because somebody else turned it on, or I turned it on for background noise.
Favorite movie?
Ooh, favorite movie. I don't know if I have a favorite movie, but I love based on true life movies. Big fan of war movies. My dad was in the Marine Corps. He'll tell you he's still a Marine. But military life growing up, so anything military related, I'm kind of into.
13 Hours in Benghazi.
Have you watched Iron Claw yet?
We just watched it the other night, actually.
Good? Or I have not watched it.
Overall, I thought it was good. The portrayals of the wrestlers that were in it, I thought were kind of not good. Like the Harley race and the Ric Flair actors were definitely terrible. but overall, it was a good movie. But slight inaccuracies that I noticed in it, nothing major, but overall it was a good movie.
I'm going to ask this is my question, not to set you up or nothing like that. Favorite promoter?
Oh, Herb Simmons, no doubt. oh, hey, Herb's here.
Hey, Herb, how you doing?
Man, I cued that right at the right time, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Perfect time.
Hey, guys. Hey, thanks. I appreciate you guys talking about me, Steve. But my comments are true. every promoter out there. 51 years, as you know, I've been doing this. And I remember when Larry Matisek called me and said, "Hey, you'll never guess who we're going to get." And when I said, "Who?" he said, "Superstar." And I thought he'd fell out of his bed and hit his head during the night and dreamt it. And that was my first time. I mean, I'd heard so much about Superstar Steve Fender from Harley and from the guys, but to think he was going to be showing up in the SICW locker room, I was just so pleased. And even though we don't see eye to eye, even though you cheat a lot, my sister says you're the biggest cheaters she knows. But a promoter out there, if you want a guy that can come out there and give you 110%, it's Superstar Steve Fender.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
That's a good, man. There's some great praise. Even though you cheat, he still appreciates you being in his life.
It's not verified.
Not verified. Well,
it's not cheating if you get caught.
That's right. It's only if you get caught, I'll tell you.
I think that's Sean Vincent's statement too. I don't know.
Well, the Canadian Zero, as I call him,
The Canadian Zero.
That's very fitting, actually. The Canadian Zero.
Yeah, it's kind of like Steven Espinoza.
Yeah.
Of course, if he buys SICW, I'm sure Steve will be happy. But
well,
yeah, you'll probably get a raise, won't you?
I'm hoping.
Yeah. Hey, you guys were talking about the NASCAR.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, I have done over all these years, I've done a lot of unique places. As Steve knows, he's been on a lot of them, everything from the Missouri Athletic Club to the History Museum to the Gateway Grizzlies Minor Ball League. But to say we're actually going to be doing this event with NASCAR is right there at the top. I mean, going back to the Coruscant room at the Chase Park Plaza Hotel, I thought was great. And it will always be one of my tops because that's always what Larry wanted to do. But now to say that we're going to be on the stage opening up for Ludacris and for Adam Wainwright's team, band that he's got. Heck, I didn't even know he had a band. That's how connected I am, So, I had a meeting today with the track people, and they're huge numbers as they always do. But I'm happy for our locker room because it's a time for them to really show up and show out. And people said, "Well, who are you going to put Superstar Steve Fender with?" And it didn't take but about 5 minutes for Bobby D to throw his hat in the ring. So I'm really looking for all the matches. But anytime you have those two in the ring, those 20,000+ fans on Saturday are going to be entertained by just that one match.
And Herb, where can fans watch that live, or do we wait till you guys put it up on Saturday night?
There's in fact, I just told today they're going to have ESPN and everybody's going to be there. I don't know how much of the matches they'll cover. We've got local news media coverage starting Thursday night. We're meeting at the track. They'll be doing some last minute promos there. They've been doing a lot of social media work and getting it out there. But when you're attracting, this is a 3 or 4 day big event. And they've got something for everybody. They got 2 car shows. One of them has got 300 cars that's been entered in it. Another one's got 100 cars. Everything for the kids. Of course, the big races. It's going to be exciting. WWE legend Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. will be there. Like I said, I'm real happy for him just being inducted into the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame with his whole family being there last week. He's still on a high over all of that. Hell, I'm on a high after all of that. How many independent promoters out there that can say that you have the number one guy, Randy Orton, which, I was involved in giving him his first match back at South Broadway Athletic Club when he first started. But here we are now in 2024, I think it is. And he steps inside of the SICW ring. And what I liked about it, he wasn't in a hurry. He took his time. His brother stole the show, who is a stand-up comedian. His sister, Becky. I mean, it was a great night for Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. and well deserving. And now for him, of course, he's been on the stage at Madison Square Gardens, and he's like Steve, been to Japan and all over God's creation. And so I'm sure being in front of 20 or 30,000 people on Saturdays, not a big thing to him, but everybody else in that locker room is going to be on an all-time high, I think.
Absolutely.
One last question for Mr. Herb Simmons. Is there a good chance or not a good chance that it will be a Fan Fest 3?
Well, like I said, this Saturday, I'm really looking forward to it. Between 30 to 40,000 people. You see how I did that, Steve?
I see how you, yeah, okay.
I picked that up very quickly.
I tell you, I am still, and again, Steve knows me well enough to know now I don't BS unless the boys are sitting around BSing. But when I tell you that as recently as a couple of hours ago, when I was on my way home, my phone are still ringing from promoters and from workers across the country saying, how in the heck did you pull off 60 plus legends and special guests and then have Randy Orton the icing of the cake? So, and I did about 12 different podcasts throughout that last month. Lovely Barbara Goodish, my partner in crime, as I call her. I left me an out there. I always said, Sam Muchnick and Larry Matysek said, if you're going to do something once, you do it big. If you're going to do it a second time, you do it bigger. So if there isn't a Fan Fest 3, my out is there's no way I could top what I did in 2024. So just read between the lines.
That's fair. That's fair. So, yeah, he mentioned Barbara Goodish, Superstar Steve. It's been a blessing. This whole relationship that Rico and I and Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast has with SICW has been a dream come true. Has been a blessing. Darla Skaggs is coming on in June. Looking forward to that. Super fan.
Well, don't believe a word she tells you.
I won't.
Yeah.
But
especially if it's in Vegas. If she starts talking about Vegas, tell her you don't believe a word about it. Herb said so.
And I'm going to do something that Herb did. I lost it. I'm not as quick as you, Herb. So,
well, the one thing we got special going on at CAC this year is Gary Jackson, the Night Train's being received an award out there, the Wrestler of the Year award, and I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, I'm mad at him. I wasn't planning on going this year, but then when we got notified that he was going to receive the award, he asked me if I would do his induction. So, and Gary's been with me since he was about 16 years old. And and Steve can attest to it. He's been in across that squared circle from him many times, and the man can still go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before I let you go, I forgot to ask the Superstar Steve. I forgot to ask you. You've been in Japan, you've been in the States. After watching the pay-per-views that have been overseas, and the fans are crazy, amazing. Compare? Can you compare the two? I mean, or is it just a different environment?
Compare the overseas fans to
the
United States
that you've experienced.
So the fans that you're seeing, like the show from France they just had, those fans are starved for shows from WWE. They don't see it that often, and that's why they're getting the reactions they're getting, is because they're not getting shows 3 times a year, 4 times a year. WWE's coming once every 5 years there, right? So when they do come, the rabid fans are showing up. Got a fly in here buzzing around. But yeah, there's definitely, I mean, in Japan's a whole different ball game. You can wrestle over there and the fans can be so quiet that you can hear a pin drop. But if you put together a really good match and everything's hitting really good, they can be so into the match that the building's rocking from all the noise that they're putting out. So I've definitely been on both sides of the spectrum on that, and it's just phenomenal. It's just a testament, to the product. So if the fans are into the product, then they'll let you know. And if they're not into the product, they'll also let you know.
So thank you. Thank you, Herb, for coming on. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, guys.
Steve. This is
Absolutely.
SICW Huge Pop Wrestling Week. On tomorrow, I have Lucky P. Larson, Esquire.
Oh boy.
Well, you're in for a treat.
Tune in.
Yeah.
And then I think Thursday I have Billy McNeil coming on. So
That'd be a great one. Billy's another one that will not disappoint you. Lucky P will probably disappoint you, but the good thing about Lucky P is you won't have to do a lot of talking.
good.
He'll do the majority of the talking for you. But Billy McNeil, you just ask him if he needs to. If he gets out of line, just threaten him. The Superstar Steve's going to come over and slap him around a little bit more.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Herb.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Superstar Steve, man, thank you for this amazing evening.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm going to play a song, a closeout song. Please don't go anywhere. I will.
Okay.
I'll take about a minute, and I want to personally say goodbye to you off air.
Sure.
But Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast, Reek, man, thank you for coming on every Tuesday,
always,
Monday,
always.
Tuesday. A little backstory about Rico and I. Rico and I share in common two of the most beautiful grandbabies. No, the most beautiful grandbabies in the world. Little Indy and little Baki. My son is married to his daughter, so it's kind of cool that we have that relationship. And it was cool because he had his own podcast and I had my own podcast, and he said, "Hey, let's do a podcast together." And so Monday night and Tuesday night we get on here and do our podcast. So
Yep.
it's
Awesome.
fun. Thank you, Rico, for being part of that. Superstar Steve, thank you for sharing your stories. By the sounds of it, could have you on. We could have you on another time down the road,
Absolutely,
maybe the end of the year.
Yeah.
There's still more stories. I have a feeling that we didn't even touch on. I mean,
We haven't scratched the surface.
yeah. So if you're willing, we'll revisit maybe November.
Sure.
And we'll have you back on because I'd love to hear some more stories. But thank you again, Huge Pop Wrestling fans that will watch it later on and that watched it today. Thank you for the chat. Thank you for
Appreciate you guys.
Follow and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're trying to build it. There's big things coming. There's some big things coming. I think I'm going to make a decision that I might pull the trigger on. So again, thank you, Superstar Steve, Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. We are out.
All my dogs, make some noise up in this house.
Who is in the house? Who is in the house? It's the gangster of destruction, so you know what's going down. And when the drive-by's coming, then you better hit the ground. Cause when your body hits the canvas, then your ass is knocked out. Who is in the house? Who is in the house? It's the gangster of destruction, so you know what's going down. And when the drive-by's coming, then you better hit the ground. Cause when your body hits the canvas, then your ass is knocked out. Fight with Adrian Whisper is like a fight with the devil, because when he's dealing with you, you cannot get on this level. Fight with Adrian Whisper is like a fight with a king. It's like a fight with an army. They got the tanks and everything. He's leaving bruises and stitches, possibly leaving you crippled. Cause when he sets up the table and sends you straight through the middle. 6 sadistic free, beat that ass with a light bulb. Leave a piece of glass embedded in the back of your skull. Who is in the house? Who is in the house? It's the gangster of destruction, so you know what's going down. And when the drive-by's coming, then you better hit the ground. Cause when your body hits the canvas, then your ass is knocked out. Who is in the house? Who is in the house? It's the gangster of destruction, so you know what's going down. And when the drive-by's